we thought we'd get invite a poet, because poets are these people who, you know, write stuff and then they just go over every bloody word again and again and again to make sure it's absolutely right. So we thought, well, who will we get? Well, we'll get the person who's in charge of our language, the person who's been appointed the trade union rep of the Scottish language, our Scottish national poet.
Only for the next 2 years,
you heard it here first. So, a big welcome to the Scots Makar Liz Lochhead.
It's a big pleasure to be here at the Glad Cafe. I'm a West Ender. The South Side's a closed book to me. It's a terrible thing, isn't it? But it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. I've been wanting to come along and see what like it is, and it's terrific. I'm sure, I mean, I might have it wrong, but do you not think that when you said to me, do you want to come and do something about Scots or something like that, and I said, I don't believe in Scots. I don't believe in Scots or English, or I just believe in language. And I said that I would come and talk about words, just about words, just the joy of words in a way. So it's really going to be a poetry reading and kind of me indulging myself in different things, and it'll depend on what questions you ask, what I do next sometimes, and so on. I'd like to say that instead of having questions at the end and everything, you're welcome to, not in the middle of a poem, but at the end of anything, you're very, very welcome to, jump in with a quick comment, be quick, because we've got to get through quite a lot of stuff. But, there and then, rather than leaving it till questions and, anything too solemn at the end. Anyway, I'm going to start off with a wee bilingual piece. And it shouldn't be probably difficult for anybody, it won't be difficult for anybody Scottish of a certain age, although it might be difficult for wee kids. It's just a wee bilingual piece. It's just called Kids' Poem, Fair and Sang. My watch is wrong, but I can still work out how long on it, roughly. Just a wee bilingual piece is called Kids' Poem, Fair and Sang. It was January, and a gey dreich day the first day I went to the school. So my mum hacked me up in my good navy blue napcoat with a red tartan hood, burled a scarf around my neck, put on my pixie in my pockets, it was that bitter, said, "Noo you'll no starve," gave me a wee kiss and a kid on scalp in the bum, and sent me off across the playground to the place I'd learned to say. It was January, and a really dismal day the first day I went to school. So my mother wrapped me up in my best navy blue top coat with the red tartan hood, twirled a scarf around my neck, pulled on my bobble hat and mittens, it was so bitterly cold, said, "Now you won't freeze to death," gave me a little kiss and a pretend slap in the bottom, and sent me off across the playground to the place I'd learned to forget to say. It was January and a gey dreich day, the first day I went to the school. So my mum hacked me up in my good navy blue napcoat with a red tartan hood, burled a scarf around my neck, put on my pixie in my pockets, it was that bitter. Oh, saying it was one thing, but when it came to writing it, in black and white, the way it had to be said, was as if you were posh, grown up, male, English, and dead. So, a wee autobiographical poem to start off with, yes? Yes? No, actually not, no. It was written, it was a first the phone call poem. That subject will come up quite a lot. Obviously I wanted to pick it to do today because of the relevance to words. If you put something in different words, is it still the same thing? Probably not, or in some ways it is. But it was actually written in response to a request from a BBC London education producer to write a dialect poem for children. And I said, "Well, where do these children live?" "Well, John O'Groats to Land's End." I don't like the word dialect very much anyway, and I pointed that out. And I quoted that out my friend Tom Leonard's poem, one of his standard English poems, which begins, And the prisons were full of many voices, but never the dialect of the judges. And the judges said, no one is above the law. So, you know, I said this to her that I didn't like the word dialect because it insinuated some people speak properly and some people don't. And she said, well, that was the point. They wanted to encourage children to keep writing, at least creatively in their essays, in their special essay jotter, to have the option to still write in hometown English. And I'm quite proud to say that I've been told that poem's been translated into Birmingham Black Patois and also into Cornish. Not the language that's only spoken by about 12 people and that makes Gaelic a world power language, not that one. Into just Cornish, you know, Cornish English. So it wasn't a wee autobiographical poem, although I did have a navy blue napcoat with a red tartan hood, of course. And you know, early on I did write things that were me speaking, and we'll come to some of them later. I'm assuming that a lot of you have come today because, you know, if you're interested in words, you write yourselves, and you know, so it's that kind of angle towards it. You know, why write this particular thing? Is a word an action? Yes, I think it is. It's an action to speak in dialect and to, you know, to choose that rather than the other thing. And I wrote it like that particularly because she said the children are from John O'Groats to Land's End. And I thought, I'm a bit of a problem here because I don't think I could write a dialect poem that would be universally understood by school children in Glasgow schools. I wouldn't, of course not. So I thought, what do? A problem always gives you the solution. I thought the second time round that they hear it, they can't say they don't understand it because they've had a translation built in. And it reminded me of all those kinds of wee poems that I liked when I was young, like, you know, around, you know, there was an old man called Michael Finnegan, he grew whiskers on his chin again, and he grew, you know, thick them out, and they grew in again, poor old Michael Finnegan, again, there was an old man, you know, these kind of rounds. So, I don't think you'll mistake the next one for me speaking out loud, although later on I will do. Some of the things I wrote at the beginning were very much in my own voice or about absolutely personal things. Of course they were. I think a lot of poets and a lot of writers start off like that. But I think I was quite quickly aware that even things that were a version of myself were a kind of dramatisation. And this next one, I don't think you would think it was me speaking. It's a wee poem, quite a recent one, another first phone call one. I was asked would I write something to encourage people to join the children's panel. And I think this is in the voice, I think he's male, and I think he's about 14 or 15, maybe 16. And he's actually speaking in a voice that he doesn't have out loud anyway. If he had this voice, he might not be in the trouble he is. But I was aware that the children's panel, which is a wonderful thing we have in Scotland, where a child has committed a crime or a child has been the victim of a crime or of abuse or neglect, is treated in exactly the same way as a child in trouble. So this is a wee poem just called Listen. And don't worry, I'm not going to speak on and on between different ones. I'm by and large going to fire them at you, but it's my opening wee kind of salvo about, you know, words. Do not assume that the I speaking a poem is the poet. It never is, even if it's based. It's never completely that, even if it's based on them. So listen. Trouble is not my middle name. It is not what I am. I was not born for this. Trouble is not a place, though I am in it, deeper than the deepest wood, and I'd get out of it. Who wouldn't, if I could? Hope is what I do not have in hell, not without good help now. Could you listen hard and well to what I cannot say, except by what I do? And when you say, I do it for badness, this much is true. I do it for badness done to me before any badness that I do to you. Hard to unfankle this, but you can help me. Maybe. Loosen all these knots and really listen. I cannot plainly tell you this, but if you care, then beyond all harm and hurt, real hope is there. When I was wee, I fell in love with words, I think, because of poems that were taught to me out loud, and of course they gave me great pleasure. I think if I forget this next one, I'm sure you could all kind of join in and prompt me, but I remember learning off by heart in primary, whatever it was, just before the 200th anniversary of Burns's birth. His 250th was just a few years ago there. But when I was 10, or just about 10, it was the 200th, and it was a miners' welfare competition. And I didn't win, I didn't get placed, but it was great to learn a poem off by heart. And I don't think if I had learned this poem off by heart, I would have ever written any poems or learned any other poems off by heart. So I probably don't need to look at this much, because learning it at 10, it did go in somewhere. You'll know this one anyway. To a mouse. On turning her up in her nest with the plough, November 1785. Wee, sleekit, coorin, timbrous beastie. Oh, what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou needna start a wassy hasty wi' bicker and brattle. I would be laith to rin and chase thee wi' murder and paddle. I'm truly sorry, man's dominion has broken nature's social union, and justifies that ill opinion that makes thee startle at me, thy pale earth-born companion and fellow mortal. I doubt na whiles but thou maun thieve. What then? Poor beastie, thou maun live. A daemon icker in a thraves a sma request. I'll get my blessing with a leave and never miss it. Thy wee bit hussy too in ruin. It silly was the winds are strewing, and Nathan knew to big a new in o' fogage green, and bleak December's winds ensuing, baith snell and keen. Thou saw the fields laid bare and wast, and weary winter coming fast, and cosy here beneath the blast thou thought to dwell, till crash the cruel coulter passed out through thy cell. That wee bit heap o' leaves and stibble has cost thee mony a weary nibble. Now thou's turned out for all thy trouble, but house nor hall, to thole the winter's sleety dribble and Cranroch cold. But Moussie, thou art no thy lane, and proven foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes o' mice and men gang after gley, and leave us nought but grief and pain for promised joy. Still, thou art blessed compared with me. The present only toucheth thee, but och I backward cast my ee on prospects drear, and forward, though I canna see, I guess and fear. It's a great poem, and it's great to say it out loud. And I think tasting the words in your mouth are what make you want to write. My favourite writer in the world was given the Nobel Prize this year. It's a Canadian writer called Alice Munro. And if you read her stories, you'll recognise a lot of your Scottish aunties and uncles and so on, because there's a real Scottishness in her ancestry. But she's just the greatest short story writer living, I think. She's just magic, and it's fantastic that she won the Nobel Prize. But she always says that of course she writes through an interest in life and through things she hears or sees or experiences in life. But what really makes her write is an interest in reading. It's language that makes you want to be part of the language game. It's writers that make you want to write things. So that was definitely true of Burns. And a long, long while after that, and just for fun, I was asked to write something that was going to be in some way in response to Burns. And I indulged in that kind of familiar habit that a lot of Scottish people have just before Burns Day, when you find yourself writing a bit of doggerel in Burns' stanza, because you've got to do the speech at the Burns supper, you know. You know, I'm not immune to that kind of thing as well. And once again, this was a first of phone call one, because it was, so I decided to write from the point of view of the mouse, you know, rather than Burns, you know, romanticising himself as this farmer, as if. He was very well educated. He was a farmer. He was a terrible farmer. He didn't succeed at it. And money was one of the biggest problems of his life. And he did sincerely care about that mouse, I think, in a way. But I think partly he wrote it because he'd written this wonderful stanza. You know, the Burns stanza, they call it Standard Harry, and it's because he stole it from a poem about the death of a piper called Habby. It's a terrible poem, but a great stanza. You know, the stanza goes A, half B, A, half B. You know, there's only 2 rhymes in the verse. 3 long lines, a wee short line, another long line that rhymes with the first 3, another wee short one. So it's called Standard Habby, that verse. And I think he picked it up from a terrible poem, and that terrible poem had been picked up in turn from one of the York mystery plays. In 1982, when I was working on a version of the mystery plays for the City of York, I was surprised to find a big long play in Burns' stanza. But the guy who wrote the poem about Habby pinched it from the York mystery plays. Burns pinched it from him. And it was the stanza that he could go on for, you know, go on for years in if he wanted. It was the one that we associate with him. And it's very addictive. But you can't really get away with writing in it now. Not seriously. You know, you're always doing a Burns parody if you're writing in it. Anyway, I decided, enough of To a Mouse, this is From a Mouse. It's me! The eponymous, the moose, the To a Mouse that, were I in your hoose, a bit of dust ablow the bed, thon dod o oose that quick turns tail, is eek, a living creature on the loose, would gar you wail. Aye, I've heard you fairly screech. You seem guy-phobic, but mice in real life, yet dream but man-mouse amity. You'll rhyme a ream, yet with skirt wrapped round, I've seen you stand up on a chair and scream like Daphne Broom. But I'm adored, on paper. Ever since first you got me out of school at Yince Enchanted, when I thought poetry was mince, till you met Rabbie, my poor earthborn companion, and the prince o' Standard Habby. For yon is what they cry the fawn he wrote in, and you recite. Gite easy as you can to quote in, because it sticks. I will allow it stotin', this nifty stanza. He could go to sick Lensway, say sick a lot in, larks to Lochranza, plopped into Peebles, Dumfries to Dundee. If a wen kens only poem I've heard, it's me. We'll greet our my plough-torn nest, no see the bit o' a gap atween the false world of poetry and baited trap. Get rent or kill, get real. Why you loves the ploughman in the poem, keen to prove sought tears, sigh, sympathy. He's sensitive. Wee sermon, mice men, schemes of glee, himself above, crying me vermin. Ploughman? That will be right. Heaven taught. He drank deep o' the Bard and Grey and Pope, the lot. Aye, for the spontaneous outburst, you thought, I'm an artifact. For man's dominion he was truly sorry. Not. 'Twas all an act. Burns, both man and poet, liked to dominate. His reputation with the lasses wasna great. They still dinna ken whether they love to hate or hate to love. He was a naughty man. He left them to their fate. Push came to shove. Couldn't he keep it in his breeks? Hell's bells, damnation. I would be the very last to gie a peroration on the daft obsession of this prurient nation, his amatory antics. He was, beaten them to it by a generation, first the romantics. Arguably, I am a poem, while prescient did presage your 21st century global distress age. I'm a female mouse, though. He didn't gie a sausage for my sparkling een. As for Mother Nature, whether yous get the message remains to be seen.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure. Anybody can interrupt me any time.
I think it's a really good idea about, you saying you don't want to be seen as a dialect poet, that sort of
Certainly
goes in
not.
a corner, aye. How do you feel about all the talk about you being the sort of voice of women in Scotland?
I'm not. I mean, I'm not even the voice of myself.
Is there a woman's voice in poetry?
Well, what I can say, and this is true, I mean, I'm old now, I'm 65, and when I started in my early 20s, there weren't any published women poets really. There were 2 or 3 who were really at the end of their lives. There was a woman called Helen Cruikshank, Violet Jacob and Marion Angus were dead, by then. There weren't any, I'm not saying there weren't any women writing, of course there were women writing, but they weren't really getting published. So a lot of the younger, there's many, many, many younger writers, younger women writers, and a lot of them say that they were influenced by the fact that I was around. But I didn't feel that I needed my mentors or my examples to be women particularly. I was really glad there was a woman called Muriel Spark, but she'd already escaped to London and then Italy. And she was a wonderful, to me, short story writer as well as, the writer of Miss Jean Brodie and various other things. And she'd been a poet. Her poems are pretty dated actually, they've not really worked or lasted very well. So I liked that she existed. And I liked various American women poets. I didn't feel that any mentors of mine had to, mirror me in every way. They didn't have to be both Scottish and a woman, but all the Scottish older male poets were mentors as well. So I'm glad that some of the younger women felt encouraged, but they would have got going anyway, of course they would. And nobody should ever feel that there's a spokesman for anybody else except themselves, not even that, I don't think, that people should be sloganeering. You're waiting for the words to pop up, and they're the words often of other people or of other characters than yourself. But having said that, I would do a few kind of autobiographical things. I'll do a few of the very early poems. I'll do some things that are one way or the other, kind of autobiographical. And I'm looking for one that I'm going to tag on to the end of it. Because although not autobiographical, it's got autobiographical elements. Yeah. There it is there. Like that. But a few of these early poems written in Lanarkshire. I grew up in kind of rural industrial Lanarkshire. There's a village called Newthill, and we lived right at the very edge of it. Just, it was fields at the bottom of the garden. And my friend Christine Bailey, who died last week, and whose funeral I was at this weekend, she and I used to go away and we would build hides halfway up coal mines. I can remember an incident, I must try and write about this. We wanted to be bird watchers and things, and I can remember us halfway up a coal bin, a lavender coloured, you know, a slurry coloured coal bin. We used to slide down coal bins and tin trees as well. We could go sledging all year round when that stuff. Your knickers got black, and your mother gave you a scalp, but could, you know, do stuff like that. But I remember Christine and I wanting to bird watch, and we got some binoculars and we built a hide. So halfway up this triangular thing, there was a sort of a couple of stakes stuck out from it, and we got a, you know, so when we put a bit of corrugated iron, you could always find old corrugated iron on the top of this place, sort of stuck it on top. And then we covered that with all these leaves and things like that. You know, it must have stuck out like a sore thumb in the middle of this lavender thing. But anyway, we went into it and looked out, and two mallard ducks, a duck and a drake, fetched up and got into the pond right in front of us. I remember the emerald green head of this, and I've always thought afterwards, if you build them, they will come. You know, they said in that corny movie. But you know, so it was very rural, industrial. In fact, I read a poem that kind of talks about the landscape. I wasn't going to particularly, but this is called the Metal Raw, and it describes what that place was like. The Metal Raw was the road, the kind of unmetalled road, the kind of path that we went up. The Metal Raw was what we used to call what must have really been the unmetalled road, or row, a no-cars scratch across two farmers' tracts between... Glasses. I didn't bring my glasses. I've also printed out things very big so that I don't need to wear my glasses for vanity's sake. Primark. Pound shop glasses. Either pound shop or Primark. Right, this is the Metal Raw, and I can now read it. The Metal Raw was what we used to call what must have really been the unmetalled road, or row. A no-cars scratch across two farmers' tracks. Between ours, with its brand new scheme, and the next ex-mining village. At 4 or 5 or 6 or so, I thought it meant the colour though. Metal Raw was crude red gravel that you'd better not break your bike on, and that surfaced just the first 100 yards or so, then patched the worst of the ruts on the dirt and mud and clinker of the rest of it. Rust on corrugated iron, that was metal and raw, both. A real remnant of the Iron Curtain, for all I knew, torn and gouged with nail holes along edges that you to watch they wouldn't rip the hand off you. Sheets of this stuff crumbled to red dust along the Metal Raw, among the black cold fires and rags and bits of brick. Around the place the tinkers still camped a week or two each spring with their piebald ponies. Always some story among us wains around the scheme or at the swings about somebody's big cousin creeping close enough to kick the boiling billy can over, about a shaken fist, cursing and swearing, and how far on the light nights that big man with the stick had hunted him. I was wee enough then, on a Sunday walk along the Metal Raw with Mum and Dad in my good coat, for the Tink's big black dog that wouldn't do me any harm to knock me flying in the mulchy ditch among flag iris and the reeds I called bulrushes, and that might have harboured baby Moses, and not one bit surprised me. See, I am talking of the time when I mixed up old Meg, she was a gypsy, and that old woman up the Metal Raw smoking a pipe outside a tilting lean-to of tarred and patched tarpaulin stretched out on hawthorn. And this was the 1950s. We slept under a mushroom cloud, feared Khrushchev and Bulgarin, men in Cossack hats in blizzards of interference on the tiny grey TV screens of the Cold War. This was the time when our mothers down the new houses stood on red cardinal doorsteps, far too scared not to buy the tinker's pegs and prophecies. I wrote quite a few poems just before I was leaving, or round about the time I was leaving that village to move to Glasgow, where I've more or less lived ever since. You know, a year or two here or there, elsewhere, attempts to emigrate to Turkey or New York or whatever, you know, I would always end up back in Glasgow. But here's, you know, a couple of early poems. The Choosing. We were first equal, Mary and I, with same-coloured ribbons and mouse-coloured hair, and with equal shyness, we curtsied to the lady counsellor for copies of Collins' children's classics. First equal, equally proud. Best friends too, Mary and I, a common bond in being cleverest equal in our small school, small class. I remember the competition for top desk, or to read aloud the lesson at school service, and my terrible fear of her superiority at sums. I remember the housing scheme where we both stayed, the same houses, different homes, where the choices got made. I don't know exactly why they moved, but anyway they went. Something about a 3 apartment and a cheaper rent, but sometimes from the top deck of the high school bus, I glimpse, among others on the corner, Mary's father, mufflered, contrasting strangely with the elegant greyhounds by his side. He didn't believe in high school education, especially for girls, or in forking out for uniforms. 10 years later, on a Saturday, I am coming from the library, sitting near me on the bus, Mary, with a husband who is tall, curly-haired, has eyes for no one else but Mary, her arms around the full-shaped vase that is her body. Oh, you can see where the attraction lies in Mary's life. Not that I envy her, really, and I'm coming from the library with my arms full of books. I think of those prizes that were ours for the taking, and wonder when the choices got made we don't remember making. It's a very early poem as well, this next one. I was thinking about it last Sunday, so although I've not read it out loud for a while, I quite feel like reading it. It's just called Poppies. My father said she'd be fined at best, jailed maybe, the lady whose high heels shattered the silence. I sat on his knee. We were listening to the silence on the radio. My mother tutted, oh that it was terrible, as over our ear those sharp heel taps struck steel, rang clear as a burst of gunfire or a laugh through those wired-up, silent streets around the cenotaph. Respect, remembrance. Surely when all was said, 2 minutes silence in November wasn't much to ask for the dead. Poppies on the mantelpiece, the photograph of a boy in a forage crack, the polished walnut veneer of the wireless, the buzzing in the ears, and when the silence ended, the held-fire voice of the commentator, who was shocked, naturally, but not wanting to make too much of it. Why did she do it? Was she taken sick? But that was no excuse. On the radio it said, couldn't you picture it? How grown soldiers, buttoned in their uniforms, keeled over, fell like flies, trying to keep up the silence. Maybe it was looking at the khaki button eye and the wound wire stem of the red rag poppy stuck in her proper lapel that made the lady stick a bloody bunch of them behind her ear and clash those high heels across the square. A dancer. This one is called Poem for My Sister, and it's a very early poem. My wee sister Janice is 10 years younger than me. She's going to be 56 next month, and I'm going to be 66, so it wasn't yesterday. It was a wee present for her 12th birthday. Just a wee poem for my sister. And it's probably still one of my favourite poems. You don't necessarily get better at it as you get older. You just keep trying to keep doing it. Poem for my sister. My little sister likes to try my shoes, to strut in them. Admire her spindle-thin 12-year-old's legs in this season's styles. She says they fit her perfectly, but wobbles on their high heels. They're hard to balance. I like to watch my little sister playing hopscotch, admire the neat hops and skips of her, their quick peck, never missing their mark, not overstepping the line. She is competent at pivot. I try to warn my little sister about unsuitable shoes, point out my own distorted feet, the calluses, odd patches of hard skin. I should not like to see her in my shoes. I wish she could stay sure-footed, sensibly shod. This next one's a very autobiographical one. It's called 1953. 1953 was coronation year. And in my personal history, it was the year I went to school. I went to school at the very start of 1953. God, 60 odd years ago. Weird. But in our family history, it was the year we got a house. My mum and dad had come back from the war, both of them serving in the forces. Came back a year married at the end of 1945, a year and a half married, and didn't get a house till 1953. So this is an elegy for my father. 1953. All the dads like you that spring had put the effort in, stepped on it with brand new spades to slice and turn clay-heavy, wet yellow earth to clods that stank of clay and were well marbled with worms and rubble. You set paths straight with slabs it took 2 men to lift, tipped barrel loads of topsoil, riddled, sowed grass seed from illustrated packets that showed tall flowers, long English lawns striped green like marrows, then stretched over paper bow ties and strings to frighten birds. So gardens happened where the earth had been one raw wound. And behind whitened windows, the mums were stippling walls or treadling singers as they ran rivers of cotton material through the eye of a needle and out again, fit to hang by Coronation Day. This was in rooms that had emptinesses, possibilities, still smelled of shaved wood and drying plaster. In no time at all, in a neat estate a long time later, I will watch in a dawn through a crack in drawn curtains. This lawn, the late September borders, mature roses, and the undertaker coming up the path, carrying a pint of milk. And this one is an elegy for my mother, and it was written just a year before that one, before the events of the last one at least. And it's called Sorting Through, but it's about a universal experience. The moment she died, my mother's dance dresses turned from the colours they really were to the colours I imagined them to be. I can feel the weight of bump-toed silver shoes swinging from their ankle straps as she swaggers up the path towards her dad, light-headed from airman's kisses. Here, at what I'll have to learn to call my father's house, yes, every ragbag scrap of duster prints her, even more vivid than a Milford snapshot on some seafront in a white cardigan and that exact frock. Old lipsticks, liquid stockings, labels like Harella, Goree, Bercatex, and as I manhandle whole outfits into bin bags for Oxfam, every mote in my eye is a utility mark, and this is useful, the sadness of dispossessed dresses, the decency of good coats, round-shouldered in the darkness of wardrobes, the gravitas of lapels, the invisible danders of skin fizzing off from them, like all that life that will not neatly end. This next one's a kind of song, it's a ballad at least, and it's called The Baker, and it's a song of some consolation after grief, I think. And once I knew who he was, it was quite easy to write his ballad. This is him speaking. Like I said, it's not always the poet that's speaking out loud. It's a poem, it's a kind of, I think it's a kind of song. It's a song without a tune though. A bit more of that later. Or, I mean, I'm not going to go on that much longer, don't worry. It's only 2 or 3. But I'm going to end up with some songs and talk about the difference between a song and a poem, I think. This is The Baker. I am as lucky for a funeral as a sweep is at a wedding, when with his red eyes, furred brush and burnt smell, he blesses bridal lace with his soil and smirching. Thus do my work night whites, the cracks on my dusty boots, my overall trousers of flower-stiffened linen, handselled your black ties and pressed morning suits, although I am not by your side, nor does anyone photograph my or that rawest absence. Dawn delivery to this hotel has me shoulder those boards of my generous dozens, as all week neighbours came with bake stuffs up the saddest path to your door, wanting to bring something sweet and light to where nothing can be so anymore. And now I sleep on sacks washed soft, while your time by the cold grave over, and after that stare at the core of the terrible oven, take tea and funeral cakes together. Let sober girls in black and white replenish plates and freshen up the cooling cups with warm, as if tomorrow like live yeast could rise and prove. I say, such crumbs do no harm in nights when I will work and you will grieve. Weak tea, sudden hunger for the heel of a new loaf, white dawn and the surprise of appetite will have you tear a lump of goodness off. Sooner, later, a new season's wind will lift, though it may be many daily loaves from this dark hour, as you let go, fling, and feel the ashes sift around your footsteps like spilt flour. I said that I would do another sort of autobiographical but also completely imaginary one. This is called Photograph, art student, female, working class, 1966. My friend Caroline Duffy, who's the, you know, the proper poet laureate and all that, has to do occasional royal things, and she does it very well because she kind of subverts it in a way. And I wouldn't go on very well with that as a Republican. I wouldn't be able to get through it. But I'm going to the Palace on Tuesday because Caroline thinks it's really funny that there's so many female poet laureates about Britain. Sinead Morrissey of Northern Ireland is the Northern Irish Makar kind of person, and Gillian Clark was, until I think very, very recently, the National Poet of Wales. And Caroline thought it would be fun to give each poet, well, you know, so there's going to be this poetry reading, so I'm going down for that on Tuesday. And I have to do kids' poem Bairnside. Caroline controls everything. That's what I've got to do, so that'll be fine. So I won't be doing this one, but this one was for a book that she did for the Queen, where each year of her life was described. And I was given, Caroline gave us all lots of, she gave 59 other poets a year to write about, and she said they were absolutely non-negotiable. She picked them out of a hat, and we had to have these years. I don't believe her. I know she deliberately gave me 1966 because she knew it had been a very good year after I went to art school. So I'm going to end up with this just now, and then take a couple of questions, and then end up with another couple of things in the song. But I'm going to end up with this one before throwing it open to a question or two. And don't worry if you've not got any. This is called Photograph, Art Student, Female, Working Class, 1966. It should say actually, imaginary photograph, art student, female, working class, 1966. Her hair is cut into that perfect slant. An innovation circa 64 by Vidal Sassoon. She's wearing CNA's best effort at Quant, ending just below the knicker line, daisy strewn. Keeping herself in tights could blow her grant entirely, so each precious pair is soon spattered with nail varnish dots that stop each run. She's a girl, 18, just wants to have fun. She's not a chick, not yet. Besides, by then she'll find the term offensive. Dolly Bird, to quote her favourite mags, is what she aspires to when her head's still full of honey and petticoat. It's almost the last year that, quite this blithely, men up ladders or on building sites wolf whistle to note the approval they're sure she will appreciate. Why not? She did it for their benefit. Looks great. Nor does she object. Wouldn't think she has the right. Though, when that lech of a lecturer comments on her tits to a male classmate openly, she might feel, quick as a run in nylon, that it's not what ought to happen, is not polite. She'll burn, but smile, have no word that fits the insult, can't subject it to language's prison. In 66, there's plenty sex, but not sexism. Soon, the female eunuch, and enough will be enough. Thanks to newfound feminism and Greer, women will have the words for all this stuff. What already rankles but confuses her will seem clear, and she'll consciously be no one's bit of fluff or skirt or crumpet. She'll know the rule is gay, not queer, ms, not miss or misses. She'll happily obey it, and sure as the pill in her pocket, that's how she'll say it. This photo's saying nothing, is black and white, opaque, a frozen moment, not a memory. The boyfriend with the Pentax took it for the sake of taking it, a shot among many others, randomly, to see how it would develop. Didn't imagine it'd make an image so typical, it'd capture time so perfectly. How does she feel? Hey girl, did it feel strange to be waiting for their changing times to change? So, any questions or any discussion points, fire away. I think we've got another 10 minutes, don't we? Could, yeah. 5 minutes and just...
You show us that picture of you at the front of your collecting poems that you...
Yes, but it's not about that.
No.
That's 1972, and yes, that is me. Heartbreaking. Breaks my heart.
The paint them in.
It absolutely breaks my heart. And I used to think I was fat then, and very plain. God, youth is wasted on the young. That's what I'm sure that there's something that somebody wants to say, or... Oh, there's somebody there. Thanks very much for breaking this. Tell me your name first.
Daniel.
Daniel, thanks very much.
When you write a poem or a play, like how do you begin? You know, do you plan? Do you make notes, or do you just write?
Pick up thy biro and write is really the way, but you've got to get the idea for something. You know, sometimes one like this, you know, or these first the phone call ones, often you've got to force yourself, but sometimes with them it's a bit of a rhyme or something. You know, sometimes when I've not got, but really, a poem is usually one idea floating around in your head, waiting for another idea to stick itself onto. But you're always looking for a bit of phrase, a bit of the real thing. And once you've got a wee tiny phrase, you've got to make up all the rest of it. And it's, you know, but having the idea or the subject matter is not enough. You need to get a wee bit of the actual stuff of it. Sometimes that's thrown out by the time it's finished, but you've needed it. Not an idea, a bit of language, really. I suppose that's why I wanted to call this Words. I was realising how, as I was reading that, how appropriate that one is, because it was talking about whenever there wasn't a word like sexism, we didn't know how to feel it. That, you know, words are genuinely useful to us in that way. But once you've got an idea, Daniel, it's like the thing is to not let it go, to make yourself write it down. And write down more than, you know, even if you're swatting for exams tomorrow or this or that, take half an hour, it's not going to kill you. Don't just try and write down it, because you'll be like me and find notebooks with things written on them and you think, eh, what did that mean? You know, you've got to try and manipulate it a totally wee bit before you can leave it be, and try and pick it up as, you know, quickly as possible, and try and get at least a draft of it down, where you've still got the thing that, you know, it used to be with me, it would be a cliche turning itself outside in. It would be a familiar thing. And I was realising when I was reading Trouble Is Not My Middle Name, how much my love of cliches was coming back, although I wrote that about 2 years ago or something like that, you know. But a good question though. You just do it. You don't need a word processor. You do need a jotter and a biro or a pencil. And you need to keep rewriting. But don't throw away your drafts, you know. The best way forward is just to keep going till you're finished with a draft, and then leave that be for maybe 10 minutes and look at it, and 90% of it will be rubbish. But the bits that aren't rubbish won't necessarily be the bits you thought were good when you were putting it down. There'll be other bits that have captured a wee bit of what was going on. You hope, you tend to hope.
Do you do, sorry.
Yeah,
Do you-
one there.
do
Yeah,
you-
what's your name?
My name's Simon.
Simon as well.
Do you find you do a lot of redrafting? Do you do
Yes,
drafts and
yeah,
drafts
you
and
have to.
drafts?
Yeah, and you keep them. You know, it's them. You know, I mean, the first drafts are quite obliterated and things written above other things, but it's good to start again, writing it out as far as it's got. And sometimes a good trick can be to cut off the first stanza and the last stanza, because you often vamped already. You kind of, you know, are making up what it's going to be about. Was it Aristotle that said, in medias res, you know, jump in right in the middle, miss out the beginning and the end, get the meat of it down. But yes, no, you have to do a lot of drafts, usually. I mean, now and again you write something that comes across quite quickly, but not usually. There was a lady had a question. What's your name?
Pat.
Pat, thanks Pat.
One of the things I really like is the way you reference words with capital letters. Like we get singer, like we get honey, like we get petticoat. You know, we get the names of things that are recognisable.
Well, there was a magazine called Petticoat.
Yeah,
and
I
it was,
know that.
you know, and, yeah, brand names and
Yes,
yeah.
you do
Well,
that.
things. No, I like that in
I like
in other people's writing. I like when people, you know, belong to a real world, and you know, I mean, it can get to a bit of a joke if you read a James Bond, and you know, it's Gucci this that, and you know, all the different. You can see certain chick lit, you know, novels, you know, reference too many kind of brand names.
Money for that placement.
Yes, I don't think you do. You know, singer and. No.
Singer no more.
No, I do like the real world, you know, the physical world. Yeah. Is there another last question? No, there's one there, another woman. What's your name?
Veronica.
Veronica. That's great, because we have 2 chaps and 2 women. That's great. Thanks, Veronica.
I just wondered if you ever think about how people are affected by your poetry.
No,
You never think of that.
no.
I don't mean while you're writing it. Or do people at performances like this ever come and say, oh, I read such and such and it made me feel this or it made me feel that?
Yes, they sometimes do, and I'm glad that it did make them feel whatever it made them feel. But it's none of my business, really, you know.
I find that quite strange, you know. I just
Why?
well, I would say on a personal level I've been affected by something that you wrote, and it was in Memo for Spring. And at that time I was at college in Edinburgh, and I'm from a mining village in Lancashire, and I found I felt very out of place, and I couldn't find the language to talk to anyone about that. And then I read a poem about the day trip to Edinburgh, and the anonymity of the Isles and Robarts, and all of a sudden I thought, God, there's someone else has felt that, and I felt so much better from
No,
that.
I mean, it makes me feel very, very, very chuffed that you say that, but I don't think about it. I mean, I'll think about it tonight, I'll go. I helped Veronica through her first term at Edinburgh. But you know what I mean, I don't, I'm trying to get the words right for the thing, you know, as well as I can. And I mean, I obviously, I have to trust that they make some sense to somebody, and if they don't make any sense to somebody, I feel gutted. But in a way, it's none of my business what actually they make. Although, I mean, I'm delighted to hear that story, you know, of course I am. But I don't think about it when I'm writing, or even, I don't think about them actually after I've written them much. I mean, you don't, you've got the next one to do a poem with it, or, you know, obviously I think about them when I'm reading them, and sometimes some of the things that have happened, I mean, I've been thinking about my friend Christine, because, you know, and also I've been thinking when I was doing that photograph art student theme, I was thinking about my friend Irene, you know, who is home from Toronto, you know, and who I just saw on Friday, and I was thinking, oh, that'll make sense to Irene, I suppose, you know, particularly, but, you know, I don't worry about that. I try and trust that, I guess, instead of worrying about it.
Do you want to give us a song before you
Yes,
finish?
I'm going to end up with bits of things about songs, actually. Just 3 things. I wrote a poem a long time ago for my friend Michael Mara, who died last year. I'm not going to read the big long poem that I wrote in memory of him, which I put down as part of what I might read, you know. I decided I would, you know, decide where I am here. But I wrote a poem called Ira and George for him. I love the Gershwins, I love those people who write poetry that break your heart out of just simple wee cliches and words. Ira Gershwin, George's brother, he probably used, I saw a programme about them just during the week there that said about how he wrote more colloquial things than anybody else. I'm going to get 3 things that I'm going to read together, and then I'm going to, sorry. I was once at a poetry reading when Sorley MacLean was reading, and he dropped his stuff and he picked them all up and he shuffled around and kept glaring over these wee glasses, glared at the audience and shuffled some more. And then he glared at us again, and I was sitting next to Norman McKay, who said in a very loud stage whisper, he called Sorley Sam. He said, I knew Sam was going to read his poetry, but I thought he was going to do it out loud. Trying to find it. Yes, this is the one I went with. So, I'm thinking about the song. I mean, I was going to read things about drama, but there hasn't been time. But that doesn't matter. We'll do another day that's just about the drama, or the dramatic monologue, yeah. Just all about people that are not me speaking, because some of these are personal in different ways. Yes. It's okay, don't read that. I'm not going to embarrass myself by bending down. I'm not going to bore myself. But I wrote this poem a long time ago about the Gershwins, celebrating the greatest songwriters, I think. They were nearly all Jewish. It was strange. Apart from Cole Porter, all the classic songwriters were all Jewish. And I think it's something to do with, their parents spoke Yiddish at home, and they were first generation speakers, and they were in love with all the slang and vitality of the American language. And out of cliches, they could make poetry that would break your heart. None more so than Ira and George. And I used to ask Michael on stage when we did a wee show together. I used to say, is it true, Michael, that the question they always ask a musician is, or a songwriter, is, which comes first, the words or the music? And he said, no. What they always ask you is, do you come from a musical family? And I would say, well, did you? And he would say, aye, because he did. He came from a very musical family. The Maras of Lochhead and Dundee were a very musical family indeed. But people do ask which one comes first, the words or the music. And another slightly later great Jewish songwriter, Sammy Khan, always used to say, which comes first, the words or the music? First the phone call. We talk a lot about that, a lot of poems that have come out of being asked to write a poem. So this is in memory of Michael Mara, but it was for Michael at the time I wrote it. But it's about 2 great songwriters, the words man and the music man. It's just called Ira and George. First the phone call, as the man said, and he sure said a mouthful to that which comes first, words or music question. Who knows? Except for every good one, there are 10 in the trash, songs you slaved over that just won't sing, in which no lover ever will find some wisecrack, twist itself to tell his unique heartbreak, so sore, so personal, so well he can't stop humming it. The simplest 3-chord melody might have legs once it's got the lyric, not tunesmiths, ham and eggs. Each catchphrase, colloquialism, each cliche, each snatch of overheard on the subway or street can say so much when rhymed right, when phrased just so to fit its own tune that was born for it. A Manhattan night in 29 or 30. It's late. You're reading Herrick. Just back from a party, your brother calls out, hey, let's work. You watch him shuck his jacket. loose his black tie and grab your book. Gather your rosebuds, he says, and slams it shut. He's right. Hard against the deadline, and at night, shoes off, moon up, just daring you. That's when you two, shoes off, moon up, just daring you, piano open, that's when you two can make it happen. The tune that smells like an onion, play it very slow, then the one that sounds like the Staten Island ferry till you hear the words. Brother, they're already there, under the siren and the train and the cab horn blare of his jazz of endless possibilities that will only fit his own fine-tuned lyric that was born for it. George Gershwin died at the age of 38, same age really. Burns died at 37, Mozart at 37 or 38 as well. All these geniuses, and Ira had to write for the rest of his life with other partners without him. I wanted to read something new, just for my own sake. This is a song lyric, so it's not complete. I've written quite a lot of songs in my time, and mostly there's too many words in them. This one's not like that. It's still quite a long song. I've heard the music. It's for the art school choir. It's a commission. So it was the first phone call thing. A lovely guy, called Jamie Sansbury, who is an architecture student at the art school. When he came 4 or 5 years ago to the art school in Glasgow, said, "What happens with music here?" And when told there wasn't a choir, thought it was a disgrace, so started it. They're building a new building. It's called the Reed Building. It's across from the Macintosh. That's a hard gig, putting a building across from that Reed Building. So there's going to be an opening sometime in April. So a guy called Ken Johnson, who's written a lot of choral stuff, and I have just written, I think we've finished it, at least I've finished. We might be tinkering apparently once the choir come, and they start in January. But it's just the lyrics of this thing. It's called Making It New, and it's going to be to celebrate the building of this thing. So it'll be okay. My finished bit's about song lyrics, and I think song lyrics are often something that gets me going on something longer than a song. But this is a song lyric, I hope, and this is called Making It New. So this is an incomplete something, but it's new. There's this bonny new building at the School of Art. It's the new kid on the block. It's the brand new house on the hill. The School of Art, the school of craft and skill. The School of Art, the jewel of art. It's the jewel of Garnet Hill. But however beautiful the building, it's only what houses what happens inside. Creation, human inspiration, that force that will not be denied. A universal inclination to make something out of nothing, something new. Art. What is it for? To bring into being. To create is to bring into being what never existed before. And however beautiful the building, it's only what houses what happens inside. Hey, student, an idea isn't that old cliche, not that light bulb coming on. An idea is a small seed, an almost imperceptible conception. Make it new. Art. What is it for? To create is to bring into being what never existed before. For however beautiful the building, it's only what houses what happens inside. Hey architect, you will find the lily you are gilding is that precious bloom that opens in many a mind. Then it's all about the expertise and the execution. Takes technique to achieve what's to our species unique. Art. Across from the Macintosh, the Makar, a viewing platform and a balcony. The Makar, a meadow or an outdoor room. But what happens in the end is whether, however many varieties of heather, we can make this Makar bloom. With art. Art. What is it for? To create is to bring into being what never existed before. There's this bonny new building at the School of Art. It's the new kid on the block. It's the brand new house on the hill. The School of Art, that's the pride of this place. If you want to watch what we make of it next, if you want to see what we make of it next, then watch this space.